I'm Daryl Owens. Welcome to A World of Difference. In the learning differences arena, parents often bob in a sea of acronyms. IDEA, or the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, FAPE, or Free and Appropriate Public Education, and LRE, or Least Restrictive Environment. Yet the most impactful acronym, one that serves as the North Star guiding children who learn differently to either successful or failed academic experiences, is the IEP, or Individualized Education Program. That bit of alphabet soup forms the legal basis for parents to secure the special education services their children need at school. But parents often are confused about what an IEP is and how to best leverage it to gain the accommodations that will help even the educational playing field and support their child's success. On this episode, you'll learn the basics about IEPs and relive one family's IEP journey in our new HealthDay segment, In the Know. Next, our Ask the Experts panel will dive deeper and provide the A to Z on IEPs. Later, we'll introduce you to our latest difference maker, a YouTube sensation and singer with learning differences who has tuned into her experiences of being bullied and turned up a blossoming career as an entertainer and anti-bullying advocate. But first, HealthDay News anchor and A World of Difference special correspondent Mabel Zhang offers a primer on IEPs.
If you're a parent of a child with learning differences, you've probably heard of an Individualized Education Plan, or IEP. But what exactly is an IEP? And could your child benefit from having one? Let's find out what an IEP is and what you should expect if you're trying to obtain one for your child. What is an Individualized Education Plan? An IEP is a legal document that maps out the types of instruction, supports, and services that a particular student with learning differences is eligible to receive. How does a student obtain an IEP? The IEP process starts with a parent or teacher recognizing that a student should undergo evaluation for learning differences. If an evaluation concludes that the child is eligible for special education, teachers, parents, and school administrators must gather to outline what services the IEP should include, write the IEP, and determine how best to execute on the plans. Unfortunately, while access to IEPs is mandated by federal law, the system doesn't always work the way it should. To learn about some of the nuances, let's hear from a mother who has gone through the process of obtaining an IEP for her child. Joining me now is Sarah Spafford Freeman from Minneapolis, Minnesota. Sarah is a strategy consultant for healthcare companies and the co-founder of an advocacy group working to improve educational outcomes in the Minneapolis public school system. She's also a mom who was forced to spend significant time and money to secure an IEP for her young son. Sarah, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me.
What are the learning differences your son is experiencing, and why did you decide that he needed an IEP?
Our son was diagnosed with dyslexia and dysgraphia about midway through his second grade year. That had presented itself in myriad ways prior to his diagnosis, including delays in speech and fine motor skills and the struggle to read. And so we had him diagnosed, as I said, midway through second grade. He's now a fourth grader.
Okay. And so when did you begin the IEP process, and what did that look like?
I knew something was up with my son, as I think a lot of parents do when our children are struggling with something, as early as the first month of kindergarten, and advocated for my child at both the teacher and principal level, the district level, and was told a myriad of things ranging from he's fine, he's just a boy. And then finally in second grade, he had a teacher who flagged concerns about dyslexia. I assumed that that would trigger the IEP process, the assessment and evaluation process at his public school, but was told that because of a scarcity of resources and challenges to provide special ed resources, that in order to get my son an IEP to support his learning, we would first have to get a private diagnosis, basically, to prove that he needed it. So the system works a little bit backwards in this regard. A lot of parents end up having to prove that their children require an IEP rather than schools being able to respond to children struggling with academics and provide that structure.
And how has he benefited from the plan? Have you noticed significant changes?
My son has made tremendous progress in the last year and a half, despite the challenges of distance learning and the pandemic. The time with the one-on-one time is the thing I point to that made the most difference. He received that both in his public school through the special education teacher, but also through a private tutor.
That's great to hear. What tips can you share with others looking to arrange an IEP for their children?
I think first and foremost to the parents and caregivers out there, trust your instincts. I knew something was up with our son when he was 3. Caregivers know, and teachers often know too. So I think trusting our instincts when we suspect that our child is struggling with something is a really important first step. The other thing is to look for advocacy groups in your local community. There are lots of nonprofits and parent groups on Facebook dedicated to helping parents navigate the IEP process. I found those forums so incredibly helpful because this was really uncharted territory for me.
Okay. Well, Sarah Spafford Freeman, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your experience, and also best wishes to your son.
Thank you so much for having me and having this conversation. It's so important.
I'm Mabel Zhang for A World of Difference.
Thanks, Mabel. If that segment only served to whet your appetite for discovering the nuts and bolts of IEPs, then you're in luck. For answers to questions like what happens at IEP meetings and for strategies to ensure your child's IEP provisions are implemented, we turn to the experts. Melissa Mayer is a learning specialist at Beacon College in Leesburg, Florida, and a former grade school teacher who worked with students with IEPs to ensure their educational needs were met, they succeeded, and met promotional criteria. Fiona Rattray is a parent training and information specialist at Westchester Independent Living Center in White Plains, New York, a peer-driven, community-based organization that empowers people with disabilities to lead self-directed lives. She develops, coordinates, and conducts parent, professional, and youth trainings in person and through webinars on the special education process, advocacy, transition planning, and building parent-school partnerships. Ann Siegel is the legal director for Disability Rights Florida, a nonprofit that provides legal advocacy and rights protection for adults and children with a wide range of disabilities. She oversees their advocacy, education, and outreach team. So let's start with you, Melissa. What typically happens at an IEP meeting?
Well, typically the team of people arrive. There's the classroom teacher, varying exceptionalities or exceptional student education teacher, anybody who actually tested the student, speech pathologist, psychologist, social worker, the parent, anyone they choose to bring, and sometimes the student, depending on their age. And what they do is they discuss the results of the testing, both good and bad. And then they create and discuss a plan that has concrete goals that translate into being able for the student to be able to learn what the other student population is learning in the classroom with whatever assistance is needed to learn those things. it's either that would be the first meeting, or there would be an update meeting where the plan would be updated and the goals would be adjusted to continue to assist the student to be successful.
Thank you very much, Melissa. Fiona, are there IEP meetings for kindergarten students? And if so, what does that look like?
Well, actually, Daryl, there are IEP meetings from the age of 3, because students can be referred and be classified from the age of 3 onwards. And that's called the Committee for Preschool Special Education, sometimes referred to as CPSE. When they get to the year where they're going to turn 5 and they're going to be entering kindergarten, there will be a meeting called a CPSE to CSE meeting, where the teachers and support staff that work with that student will meet with the parents, look at evaluations, look at the child's progress, and make a determination as to whether or not that child is going to need services when they enter kindergarten. If that's the case, then there will usually be a follow-on IEP meeting to consider what needs to go into the planning for that student when they enter kindergarten. So very much the same format. As you go through school and the child gets older, the meetings may become a bit longer because you have a lot more information to work with.
Thank you, Fiona. So, Anne, since IEPs are a school process, is there some homework that parents should do in advance of the meeting to ensure that they are prepared to be their child's best advocate?
Absolutely. I recommend that parents request any and all reports, work samples, evaluations, anything that's going to be discussed at the IEP meeting prior to the meeting so they can adequately prepare for it. Also, during the school year, as parents receive report cards, they should also be receiving progress notes with those report cards. So parents should be documenting and tracking the progress their child's making toward achieving their IEP goals throughout the school year. So with that information and their progress reports, the parents are adequately prepared to come in and have meaningful participation in the IEP meeting.
So, Melissa, are there some important questions that parents should ask in advance of the IEP meeting?
There are questions that parents should ask in advance and during the IEP meeting. Things like, what would this look like in the classroom? What type of assistance will my student receive in the classroom? Also, is my child going to be pulled from the classroom? And if so, how are they going to make up the learning time missed if pulled from the classroom? Who specifically is going to be providing the services for my child? How often will we be updated on our child's progress? Can we ask for more reports than just midterm and end of the semester or end of the 9 weeks? And what are some of the things that we can do at home to follow through on what is being done in the classroom so that our child can be as successful as possible?
Thank you. Fiona, so we've been talking about things to do ahead of the meeting, and we've kind of touched on some of the paperwork, but should things like a meeting agenda, the child's most recent IEP, and copies of the notes and reports, should those things be available to the parents to be able to preview ahead of the meeting?
So ordinarily the schools would send out a letter detailing the meeting, so the time it's going to take place, the date, and who's likely to be participating in the meeting. They don't always send an agenda, but I would encourage parents to actually draft their own agendas and to share those with the school district, with the CSE chair prior to the meeting. It doesn't have to be anything really formal. It just helps the people who are going to be in that meeting understand what the parents' priorities are. I would suggest listing at least 3 priorities for that meeting. Prior to the meeting, the parents should expect to receive, they should already have a copy of the IEP. They should receive that before the beginning of the school year. But if they don't have one, they should certainly request a copy of it. They should also expect to receive reports from any therapists or psychologists working with the child, and reports from any new evaluations And I would want those at least a week before the CSE meeting, so I have time to look at them as a parent and to understand them. Also, if as a parent you have had any private tuition or evaluations carried out for your child, you need to share those as well with the CSE chair prior to the meeting.
Thank you. So, Anne, we could do several episodes of the show and still not cover every question that parents could ask during an IEP meeting. But I'm wondering if you can give us kind of a tip sheet on some of the more critical questions parents should be asking during the meeting to ensure they, quote unquote, win the meeting.
Well, when parents come to the IEP meeting, they really need to focus on what the priority educational need will be for their child. So I would ask that parents know and ask the questions that regard what exactly is their child's present level of performance. So when the IEP team is getting ready to draft this document, they need to develop the present level of performance, which is kind of the roadmap to what the student will get in order to receive a free and appropriate public education. So parents need to not hesitate to ask exactly, what level my child is doing in reading, math, wherever their area of need is. And they need to make sure that when this plan is drafted, that the present level of performance is drafted with specificity. So what we need to know is when this document, if the child should move to another school or another district or another state, that this document will be portable enough that anyone picking up can read and know exactly what the child needs. So the parent needs to be asking, exactly what services the child will be receiving, and those need to be drafted with specificity. Who's providing them, where they're providing them, when, like, for example, if your child is receiving speech language services, you would want to know, where they're receiving it. Is it in the classroom? Is it a pull-out session? How much? How long? Are they getting it for 90 minutes a week? Are they breaking it into, 3 sessions? And where that will be delivered. So parents really need to be asking those questions that will ensure that the goals, objectives, and related services, accommodations, modifications, and placement are all really clearly defined on the IEP plan.
Thank you very much. So Melissa, IDEA lists mandated IEP team members, but how important is it to ensure that a general education teacher is part of the process and that teacher stays throughout the meeting?
Well, as a former classroom teacher, I believe it is incredibly important for the teacher to be in the room for multiple reasons. First of all, the classroom teacher is the person who will be spending the most educational time with the student during the school day. This is the teacher that should be aware of the student's specific needs so that they can be met as often as possible during the school day. And as a classroom teacher, I was also tasked with tracking data on that student. So I would need to know what type of data I was tracking to help the team determine whether or not the interventions and the assistance was helping. Also, we are the ones who know the student in an academic setting, so we should have input as to whether or not we believe what they are wanting to put into the IEP is something that will benefit the student or that the student will not be able to tolerate, or how they would react to any type of intervention. We've spent the most time with the student in that setting, so we should be a part of this meeting from beginning to end to best assist the student.
Thank you, Melissa. Fiona, as the IEP meeting unfolds, should parents ever be hesitant about asking why as they are being deluged by the information presented to them?
Absolutely not. Parents can and should ask as many questions as they can during the meeting. They're a key member of the team. And you know your child better than anyone else. Yes, the school and the teachers know your child as a learner, but you've known that child since the day they were born. So you need to feel that you are a core component of that meeting, and you need to understand everything that's being said in the meeting. There's a lot of special education jargon that tends to come up, so I'd recommend to parents that they look for some commonly used terms online, acronyms that come up in these meetings, and that will help them to not have to ask why quite so often. But this is their best opportunity to have a full and frank discussion with the team that's working with to support their child. So make sure that you understand absolutely everything. There's no such thing as a stupid question.
Thank you, Fiona. And so Fiona hit on something that I want to have you amplify a bit. As she mentioned, the teachers are experts at educating students, but parents are the experts on their kids. So I guess my question to you is, should parents be reticent about telling these educators that, hey, you know what works at home for my kid is this. Maybe it would work in the classroom to help them find the success they need?
Absolutely. Under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, parents are a required member to the IEP team meeting, and they need to have meaningful participation. With that meaningful participation, I don't mean just lip service. What they know about their child really needs to be considered. You know, as stated, teachers are professionals. Well, parents are the experts in their child.
Watch the full Ask the Experts segment on our website at awodtv.org if you want to learn more about IEPs. You can also watch or listen on Facebook, YouTube, or on your favorite podcasting platform. In 2013, as a 16-year-old, Meredith O'Connor stepped out from the shadows of bullying with the YouTube release of The Game, part music video, part therapy session that shared her personal experience and trauma. Since then, O'Connor, who has ADHD and OCD, spent years touring schools and sharing her experiences while releasing charity songs to benefit mental health groups and hitting the high notes as a formidable advocate for anti-bullying and mental health. Our senior correspondent Cindy Peterson has the story.
Pop singer Meredith O'Connor is using her claim to fame to advocate for mental health. Living with ADHD and OCD herself, Meredith was bullied in school for her height, her hair, and for being different. But those were the very features that launched her career.
I was bullied a lot for how I looked growing up as a kid, right? And I'm, to this day, I mean, being different, a lot of times kids don't understand what to do when someone's different. So they would find different things about me just to like make fun of or make jokes about. And I think that was sort of, whether it was a scapegoat, meaning like we need someone to make fun of, whatever it is, I eventually internalized it, right? I thought like, oh, if they're telling me I'm horrible, I'm definitely horrible. And if they're telling me I'm ugly, it's probably true. So modeling was the first kind of instance of ironic, life kind of teaching me that like just because someone says something doesn't mean it's true.
Meredith was diagnosed at a young age, making schooling difficult because of her learning differences. Now she is on a mission to bring awareness that different does not mean less intelligent.
I think like growing up, I was under the impression that I wasn't as able as my peers, or because with ADHD, when you're assessed for like how well you can write, and you know what I mean, and how much you can memorize and pay attention in class. Those happen to be, at least for me, and a lot of people with ADHD, like those are the weakest points, right? And if, although I may have had really high potential in certain areas and subjects and categories, the learning style just wasn't compatible with the way I learned. So unfortunately, I think a lot of kids who learn differently are categorized as less capable or less intelligent. And the problem with that is, letting a kid believe they're not smart or as smart as they actually are. Growing up, you see really tragic consequences. I think we see it across the country. You can look, as history has shown, and even today, some of the greatest innovators and most brilliant discoveries and innovations come from people who are different. And I'm strongly in belief of that's not a coincidence. If I listen to the way the current system is right now, K through 12, I would have believed that I wasn't smart. And I think that's I'm just really lucky that I was aware that I had strengths to offer this world. And that's why I'm so passionate about kids who are different, letting them know that you do have these strengths. Because at least for me, that's what got me through a lot of hard times.
Meredith transitioned from a model to pop singer when her first hit song, Celebrity, went viral in 2013.
Started modeling in my early teens, and then I was discovered and through a foundation event, and I was able to then, I was signed to my first label, and the song Celebrity went viral, and that's sort of when things took off. And my life did like a 180. It went from, I remember being bullied in school to like being stopped in the street for autographs and selfies, and it was a very strange but exciting time.
Today, Meredith is still performing and has even co-founded her own record label.
Ever since my first song took off, my life completely changed, and I think the most recent venture was being a co-founder of the label I'm with right now, which is Metamorphosis Productions. So I think that being a co-owner of it has been interesting. You know, you really learn how much goes into just the production end of things.
One of her latest songs, You Are Not Alone, sums up the message that Meredith has for those with learning differences.
So when I had this following, I said, what if I am able to, like for the few kids out there that may be getting bullied, maybe I can help them feel better. Like maybe I can be that role model for them. And I saw it really just as my chance for that. I was told that my fame would only last for 15 minutes because again, this was a YouTube video, and we all know the model of the music industry now. So I sort of said, like, if that's gonna happen, I may as well just put this message out, see who it helps. You know what I mean? See where it lands. A lot of my career has been discovering all these things I was ashamed of, all these things that make me unique. They're actually things to cherish, and I get really passionate about kids who don't know that because I really want them to know that, so they don't have to go through that pain.
With A World of Difference, I'm Cindy Peterson.
Thanks, Cindy, and congratulations, Meredith O'Connor, for making a difference. And that does it for this edition of A World of Difference. I'm Daryl Owens. I'll see you back here next time. You can watch episodes of A World of Difference on the Beacon College Facebook and YouTube channels and on the show's website, awodtv.org. The website also provides tip sheets and other resources for your parenting journey. And you can listen to the show on the go on Spotify, Breaker, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and other popular podcasting platforms. Thank you for watching and supporting A World of Difference.